Hi everyone, welcome to ADP List Growth Session. I'm here today with a very special guest, Jesse. Hey Jesse.
How's it going, everybody?
Awesome. Jesse, thank you so much for joining us today on this growth session. Obviously, we know that you're a very busy and popular person in design. So it's our honor to have you here. And I gotta say, man, you have an amazing setup. Unlike me here, I'm just in my plain room, so I have to learn a little bit more about interior design. But Jesse, I know that you're calling in from Austin today, which I believe it's the morning for you, and it's really late night here for me at in Singapore where I'm calling from. It's 1 a.m. here, so nonetheless, I'm still really psyched and just really excited to host you and everyone here. So welcome to the show. But before that, before we dive into it, I would love to give Jesse a quick introduction. Um, about who he is and obviously everything that Jesse has done and accomplished in the design world. So Jesse is a product UI UX designer with more than a decade of experience, known for his passion and proficiency in problem solving, visual UI design. And by the way, if you have not seen his visual UI design, you should really look at his Instagram and his YouTube video. Is amazing. And obviously, not last but not least, his skills for front end development, where he talks about on his YouTube as well. Jesse today has over 363,000 subscribers and AKA students on his YouTube channel. Huge YouTuber himself. Obviously, I think one of the biggest, YouTube content creators for design. And so if you're not following him, you should. Jesse also previously worked at company like Apple, also worked with company like Adobe and Hawaiian Airlines as well. So Jesse obviously brings more than just content creation. He is a true blue designer with us here today. So Jesse, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited. That intro was like, oh yeah, I remember that. Oh, that was yeah. Okay, that's good. Yeah, so this is gonna be fun. I'm excited about the chat today.
Man, I've not missed out anything, have I? Did I miss out anything?
Ah, man, there's probably a lot of stuff we could unpack during the
Okay.
conversation, but you hit the big tenets, I think.
Got it. Thank you so much, Jesse. So I want to, first of all, I want to start this conversation. Today's conversation is really all about, your influence in design, your personal branding, and I think more importantly, like, the process and the journey of doing that, where I think, we can learn a lot. Obviously, we know that, being a designer and finding a job in this market is really tough. In the previous sessions, with different speakers, I think we get a lot of questions about how do we get jobs during this market. And obviously, I think one of the clearest answer was that you got to have an influence, you got to have a network, which I think you obviously have a big influence and network as well. But let's start off with the question as to, how did you became really transform yourself from a designer to this content creator that you are today. Tell us a little bit about that story, that the decisions that you make, to sort of like become who you are today as well.
Sure. Yeah. I think, like most people, I started off hyper focusing on the craft itself. And that's where everybody probably should start. You have to spend the time, whether you call it like the 10,000 hours of mastery or just growing through that learning curve of learning your skill, right? So, started out in traditional print design, moved to web design, moved to front end development, realized that that's where I wanted to be in the digital design space more than anything. And I really fell in love more with websites and applications, mobile applications, desktop software, and so that's where the trajectory of my career. And I think a lot of times, I just want to make sure that everyone understands this, Felix. Like I think a lot of times when they see somebody on YouTube, they see something really cool on Instagram, we're catching a highlight reel. We're going, oh, look, I should be doing that right now. But they don't realize, like, I'm almost 40. I've been doing this for 17 years. It's been a long haul, right? So there's no such thing as a overnight success for a band you hear on Spotify or some sort of influencer or designer, whoever it is you see online. That person has been diligently working in the background. So there's no such thing as overnight success. You just found them today. It just so happened that you heard of them today. So don't be confused by any of that, like, or misled by any of that. It's been a long process. But I think what was, starting to focus on craft was the first portion. Let's master craft. Let's get better at craft. Let's explore other areas that interest you that can help elevate your craft. Let's get around other people that challenge you to be better at your craft. You have to start there. I think that's the ground floor. I think the next step is I stepped into wanting to build a YouTube channel, not because I wanted to become a content creator, but because I finally realized, hey, I want to be able to give back. I want to be able to participate in my community in some sort of valuable way, and I want to have some sort of impact in some way. And I started out trying to blog, and I realized I hate writing. I tried to do a podcast, and it just wasn't really my thing. I didn't feel like I was connected, but I realized that I'm okay at talking at the camera and sharing experiences and things that I've learned. So I jumped into the social media thing more in a desire to give back, and then also a little bit of a personal challenge of consistency. I was a fairly inconsistent person, so putting yourself out there and building some sort of personal brand through social media requires you to show up weekly. And so that was kind of like the next step, where not only was I doing the design work, but now I'm also sharing that design work, teaching design to other people. You guys are big on mentorship. I'm big on mentorship. I had a mentor when I was young. And so, I just knew that, like, I want to mentor, but like my time is finite, it's limited. So if I can make one YouTube video and 100,000 people watch it, I've technically, in some small way, I've given back and been an influence on their life. That's the kind of impact I want. The last piece of that is just consistently doing it and trying to do it well. And I think that's the hardest part, right? People get excited about mastering their craft. They get excited about impact, but they're not necessarily excited about the hard work, diligence, and consistency and that long tail end plan that has to take place for you to have such impact. And so that's really been my challenge for these last 6 or 7 years, is how do we continue at a pace that will allow or continue to have that impact on people, but allow me not to burn out and stay the test of time. That's kind of like a little bit of the journey. I don't know if that answered your question. It was a bit of a ramble, but hopefully it gave you some insight.
No, yeah, thanks so much for that, Jesse. It's if I'm hearing you correctly, you really started off focusing on your craft, and the next phase for you was thinking, how do you give back and be involved in the community, and content creation in the form of videos, less of podcasts, but more videos, became sort of like the medium for you to give back in that second phase, and then the third phase was obviously just being very consistent with that. And did I just hear that, like this whole process of being sort of like going full time into content creation or getting more consistent with it took you about 6 years? Is that right? Has the journey been 6 years?
It's been about a 6.5 year journey. Yeah, I believe. I mean, I uploaded a YouTube video probably like 8.5 years ago, but I was just like
Yeah.
fooling around one day and and I uploaded something, but I didn't actually really start showing up and trying and considering it a part of my life and an aspect of my life until about 6.5 years ago. And it's been a slow and steady grind to
Yeah.
get to where I'm at right now, where and I think a lot of people are, you kind of said it, so I want to make sure I clarify. Like, I'm not a full-time content creator. Like, I still run businesses, I
I'll be
still have
surprised. Yeah.
kids, I still do all that stuff as well. And so, content creation, education, courses, programs, mentorship has become an aspect of my business, but it's not my full-time thing. And the reason is because I don't want it to be my full-time thing. I still love my craft. I still love solving problems, and I don't want to just surrender that and give up that aspect. So I've had to figure out how to do all of it in a way that I can balance life.
Oh man, like I am just so surprised right now because I legitimately thought that you were running a couple of business, and this is also sort of like your full-time job as well. And so thanks for clarifying that. And now I'm even
Yeah.
more impressed with what you're able to do, because I was checking your YouTube channel out, right even before this call and last week as well. And I just saw the consistency, and so it's hard to believe that like this is not your full-time job. But yeah, it's awesome. I mean, you're almost like the Mr. Beast for design, but I'm sure like there are tons of things that we'll talk a little bit about content creation. Now, talking about content creation, I think a lot of it can also be related back to personal branding and building your personal brand online. Obviously, the contents that you put out really represents who you are as a person, what you care about. So I'm just curious, what is your thought process on crafting personal branding? Are there some principles that you follow, or like intents of like how do you kind of like want to portray yourself to the world, right? So I'm curious about that thought process as to how you think about personal branding, and what would you advise for people really looking to put themselves out there and maybe build a personal brand for themselves? Do they have to do it through content creation, or what are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, I think personal branding is like it's a funny topic because people either automatically go to the idea of social media, content creation, or they go to the idea of visual identity, logo, color palettes. Those are the two places that most people's minds go. But I think what's kind of undergirding the whole thing is actually your mission, your vision, and your purpose. So establishing what is my mission? What do I want to do here? Like what do I want to create? What's important to me? What do I value? These are things that large corporations actually have to ask themselves, or businesses as they're forming, before they can establish an outward facing brand. That personal brand is, who am I? I could try to be somebody else. I could try to fake it, but that's not going to go well because it's not going to pair well over the long haul, for who I am and what my purposes are. So if anybody is thinking, oh, I want to start making content or doing the thing because I want dot dot dot, I just want money, or I want like some sort of different pathway for a career, that's the wrong thing. You should be thinking about your personal values, what matters to you, write your own vision and purpose and mission statement, and that's the start. And for me, everything like my personality lays on top of that. So my goal is like, I want to help people. I want to encourage people. I want I want to impact every designer that I possibly can so that they can have impact and live a life that they enjoy. That's my purpose, right? And that's what I want to do all day long, whether it's a video, a piece of audio, an interview. This is my mission. And so with that mission starts to become the technical aspect or the tactics of it. Well, how am I going to do that? But I always fall back on, who am I? And am I okay being who I am? So like that, I said it earlier. I started trying to blog and try to have like this professional kind of like persona of myself. But you know what? Like when people close their eyes, like, and they think of me, it's the same way that people are probably experiencing me right now is the same way that my wife, my friends, my community here in my neighborhood experiences me. I'm fun. I talk with my hands. I laugh a lot. I tell stories, like that's just who I am. So I had to figure out how my personality could match with my goals, my mission, my purpose, my vision. Put those two things together and just be authentically you. That's the start of anything, right? Colors, purpose, platform and color and all that kind of stuff. That stuff is secondary. It's tertiary even. What's primary is, who are you? Be authentically you to actually pursue the things you actually want to pursue. That's the big thing right there. So I think everybody should be actually establishing a personal brand, just more on a tactical level, because that can help your career. It can help your progress, but it's only going to help you if you are authentically being you and showing up for real purpose. Because without purpose, you burn out, you're exhausted. I don't want to do this anymore. And without you being authentically you, it's just, you're never going to have fun. It's never going to get to the place where you want to be. Or you'll start being known for things that you don't want to be known for. And that's exhausting. So, just that I think everybody probably should. We could talk about some stats and details as to why everybody should be building their personal brand, but it all starts with those kind of mission driven things.
Thank you so much, Jesse. Really talking about being yourself and then pursuing your mission and your purpose. No, when we talk about personal branding, and just really painting this picture about yourself and to the world by understanding who you are, I'm curious, like, how has personal branding helped your career, and what are your experiences around that, and also on the flip side, what has it not helped? What has remained unchanged as well?
Hmm. Yeah. So I think personal brand, the ways that it's helped me is it has opened up 100% really cool pathways, interesting things. And again, not so much because people see some sort of follower account or like following amount or subscriber count and they want to be a part of that. It's because they see that like I've grown an audience, a trusted community, and that there is purpose, there is mission and vision behind that. And so that opens up a lot of opportunities for people who are like-minded in mission and purpose to come alongside and say, I'm also doing this cool thing. And I go, great. I love that. Let's join forces. Let's do that. So there's opportunities and avenues that have been open to me because people are identifying like-minded people, like-minded individuals or mission. It's the same way, like, if you were wearing like a band t-shirt and you saw somebody across the room in a crowded party wearing the same band t-shirt, you're like, hey, you and me, like we're on the same page. We love the same thing. And so it's so much fun being around other people and companies and products who are passionate about helping people, about teaching people, about growing, designers, creatives, and entrepreneurs. Like I love that stuff. So it's put me in context of a lot of people I probably wouldn't have been able to without it. Now, things that haven't changed, I would say, is it's hard work. I think it's always easy to take like the quiet, comfortable, or even I might say, insecure pathway, which is to tell yourself or lie to yourself and say, I don't have anything to offer. Nobody would want to hear from me. I don't have anything of value to share. And all of those things are lies. Those things aren't true. But one thing that hasn't changed is that imposter syndrome is still there. It doesn't matter how many subscribers I get, how many videos, how much watch time, how much money I make. I'm always constantly battling imposter syndrome. And it's a daily battle of me saying, hey, listen, I'm not trying to be all things to all people. I'm just trying to help one or two people out there. And if those people are helped, then so be it. Then my mission is valid. Let's keep pushing forward with it. So that daily work of battling insecurity, always there. The daily work, just in general, of it being hard work, to be of service and to be helpful to other people. It's hard work. It takes time, and that's never gone away. Now, as I've grown certain aspects of my business and my online brand, I might have hired people or brought people onto the team that are better at doing something than I am. And that's great. I can delegate, I can offload certain aspects of things, of my business and what I do. But it's every time I offload something, it just opens up new time for me to now apply my skills in some other area. Right. So I'm taking this interview and having this chat with you because I have a trusted executive assistant who is answering emails and dealing with all the stuff in the background for me, but it doesn't mean that I get to sit around and play video games. It means I get to refocus on mission and purpose yet again.
That is amazing, Jesse. So it is a master class of how you dedicate your time, and also, just really sort of like the idea of focusing on things that you actually care about. I think that is something that I took away from what you just talked about, which is, that is one thing that doesn't change, right? Which is you love what you're doing and you're focusing on that. So thanks for sharing that. And touching about sort of like while we're still on the topic of personal branding and building your influence, one of the things that we also notice, and personally I notice, is that we are starting to see a wave of content creators coming up everywhere. I mean, you have TikTok, you have Instagram, and I don't want to say this, but I feel like I have to, which is that a lot of these content creators are maybe just 2 to 3 years or maybe even lesser in their craft of experience, and they're just already starting to create contents in design. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? They have not much experience in the industry, but yet, there are tons of contents around that they're producing. It seems like tons of noise as well. So what are your thoughts on that as a fellow content creator?
Yeah, I might be like a little contrarian on this. Like, I love it. I'm all about it, man. I'm all for it. And here's the reason why. Because I'm not a person who thinks that you have to have X amount of years or experience or whatever it is to have a voice. I think everybody has a voice. I think everybody has their own story, their own experience, their own way of thinking through things. And I don't think you have to know, quote unquote, all of it before you can speak. I think if you have 1 inch of experience, guess what? You have 1 inch to share. You have 1 inch to offer to the world of experience, right? If you had 10 miles, oh man, so exciting. I love spending time with people who have been in the industry for 20 years, 25 years. They have this wealth of knowledge, and that's phenomenal. But doesn't mean I can't learn something from somebody who just started. It actually quite often makes me go, oh, you know what? I forgot how hard that is. Thank you for reminding me, because I'm now 16, 17 years into this industry. The industry is changing. People are looking at it in new ways. So I do think, though, to kind of maybe counterbalance my own viewpoint here, I do think that as long as you're coming with a level of humbleness, right, and ditching the ego and the pride, and needing this sort of feeling that people sometimes need to seem like the subject matter expert, like I'm the end all be all. Like, one of my favorite quotes of all time was from Mr. Miyagi in The Karate Kid, and he said, "You know karate, somebody else always knows more." So there's this humble nature to you that says, "Hey, I know something." Great. I'm going to share that something. I'm not going to lord it over people, but instead, I'm going to be very open handed and kind with it and be willing to be wrong. If you come with that attitude, I don't care if you've been in the design game for 1 day. I want to hear what you have to say. As long as you have that mentality, to me, that's all good.
Awesome, Jesse. I love that take of yours. Obviously, it's such a, as you mentioned, it's a contrarian thought. Not everyone shares that. but love that perspective of, like, if you have 1 inch, that's all you got to share it, right? Like, the world deserves to hear it. So talking about, sharing and contents, I know that there might be limited number of contents that you can put out each week, and obviously due to time, and I think more importantly, it's also, inspiration, right? Creative block, and or rather, like, or you have a huge, creative juice, right, sometimes. And so I wonder, are there times where you feel like, you've ran into creative block, and you felt like, hey, look, I really can't do this anymore, and you sort of, like, just have no content to produce at the point of time. What do you do, right? Could you share about those times, and some advice around creative block?
Yeah. I have quite often just thrown my hands up in the air when I experience creative block or kind of starting to feel that feeling of burnout, and just throw my hands up in the air and go like, maybe I just want to quit this whole thing. Maybe I just want to be a farmer. Can we just like, is that okay? And I need somebody that I know and love and trust, my wife, friends, like associates, who can really just kind of rein me in and go, no, that's not, you don't just throw the baby out with the bathwater, but it is a good time to assess how you got to this place. How did you get to this place where you feel burned out? How did you get to this place where you're experiencing creative block? So asking those why questions underneath the hood is a lot better, right? Like being frustrated that your car doesn't start is not as helpful, like banging the hood and being upset versus opening up the hood and saying, hey, what's happening under here? Oh, that's right. I haven't put oil in this car for 10 years. This thing is not going to run properly. So it starts to become a backing down of my current expectations and a reassessment of how I got here, and then the establishment of healthy processes and habits that will keep me from getting here again. So it's okay to take a breather. It's okay to step away from the project if you get blocked, but you don't step away, just come back expecting everything to change. You have to ask the why questions. Why am I blocked? Have I been overwhelmed? Have I even, I mean, you can go real high level, or you can go just real basic. Like, have I been sleeping well? Have I been drinking water? Have I been looking at things that inspire me? Or have I been so narrowly focused on this one thing that I'm not allowing myself to be inspired anymore? Right? Have I been so hyper focused on this type of work and paying the bills that I've let no creative joy come in like to my life? Have I not set aside time to go on a date with my wife or play with my kids? All of these things are why questions, and we're trying to get to the bottom of it. So for me, it's about slowing down, reassessing, evaluating, and then reestablishing healthy habits that will try to limit me from getting there. I would say in my time, as and I'll throw like the last 6 or 7 years as content creator, business person, agency owner, all of these things together. It's a lot of kind of plates that are spinning at one time. I would say these are the times when I've been most pressured to experience burnout and creative block, but I've actually had less because it's been a lesson learning for me in these last 6 years of establishing healthy habits. Like I can only run a certain pace because if I push past that pace, I'm going to exhaust myself. So it's really an exercise in governance and self control. I want to do this thing. I want to take on that thing. I want to do that new business venture, whatever it is. But there's a lot of times where I have to learn how to say or instead of the word and. Like back in the day, I used to say, oh, I can do that and that and that and that. And now I've learned how to say, oh, I can do this or this. Because if I don't say or, I am not hyper focusing on what matters and what my mission and purpose is yet again. So, I think those are the things that I do when I feel creative block or burnout is I have to refocus.
Well, thank you so much for that, Jesse. It's really all about focus and reassessing, reflecting. And you talk about habits and some healthy habits that help you. I just wonder, like, are there any habits that you found particularly useful that you like to share with everyone, that really has you have established over the years that you realize that could help you, go through these creative block moments?
Yeah, I think we live in such a digital age. I think that people really don't understand the importance of analog or tangible physical things. But more importantly, knowing what things work for you digitally and which things work for you, like, in an analog kind of like tangible way. So like calendars work for me digitally. Like I live off my calendar. Everything goes into my calendar. I have to-dos and calendars mixed together. I'm a Notion user, so that's my second brain. I brain dump everything into that thing. Love that system. That system works for me. It doesn't have to work for you, but it works for me. But what doesn't work for me is trying to establish my daily kind of like routine, or like my daily to-dos. Like, hey, what are the two or three things I need to get done today? I have to transfer all of those over to cards, because post-its and analog paper, that's what works for me there, right? Also, there's certain things like in the famous book by James Clear, Atomic Habits, he talks about establishing or designing your environment, right? There are just things that like work for me and don't work for me. I built this studio and office that I'm in with my own two hands in my backyard, because working inside of my house in a spare room with children running around and everything, it just wasn't working. I couldn't focus. I couldn't record videos because there was children screaming and playing. And so I decided, you know what? It's worth it to me, my time, my energy, my money, to build a separate office, because I can have interviews and calls like this now. I can film. I have invested money and time and energy into setting up this studio. You see like the background here, but over on that side, there's lights, there's poles, there's things happening, because when I want to record and make content, I want to just flip everything on and go, because that's what works for me. It's a deterrent if I have to set up tripods and do all that stuff. So establishing and building and designing my environment so that that environment lends towards success for me, that's what matters to me. So, and I think to boil it all down, it's learning what works and doesn't work for you, and be gung ho about what works for you, and absolutely do away with the things that don't work for you. That's be militant about knowing and figuring out what works and doesn't work for you. So that for me, those are like, we can get into like the small nitty gritty of habits and things, but for me, that's the biggest principle is, I tried this, it's not working, I'm ditching it. I've tried this does work. I don't care if something's new and better and shiny. This is what works, and just staying with it. So that's important to me.
Wow, those are really some very, very impressive habits and things that you have put in place. I love the part where you talk about building that environment, because I think, a lot of times we just wake up, just kind of like settle for whatever environment there is. And a lot of times, just there's no sort of quote unquote time to spare just to build a new environment. And I'm so glad that you shared this with us, and the story, and somehow shared the story as well behind what we just see, in your background. So that is a beautiful reminder of like how you can land success from your
I
environment.
want to
So
also want
thanks
to
so
like
much.
add one more thing to it, if you don't mind. I saw somebody like
Go for it.
recently talking about like all of these trendy habits, like, and working out's not trendy, but like a lot of times when we see like the daily lives or the vlogs or like the insights or behind the scenes into successful people's lives, you read Tools of Titans by Tim Ferriss, and you're like, oh, look, I'm supposed to wake up at 4 a.m. like a Navy SEAL and drink this much water and take a cold plunge and whatever it is. What I heard somebody say this recently, like Jeff Bezos was not doing all of that, like in that junky office with a spray painted Amazon banner. He was diligent in building his thing and focusing on craft. All the habits of the supplements and the cold plunges and the work, all that stuff came later. People feel like, oh, if I do these things, it will equate to success. No, no, no. What really equates to success is Jeff Bezos did what worked for him. He had a vision. He had a mission. He focused on that mission. He was diligent, consistent on that mission. He ground away. He was grinding day and night to make that mission become reality, that vision become reality. And then afterwards, when things started to pick up momentum, he started to adopt some of these other habits. And I feel like social media, Instagram has shown us the veneer porcelain. Oh, you have to do these things. And it's just not true. So sorry, I just want to interject one more time. Do what works for you, but make sure that you are doing what actually matters. Everything else is chaff. Everything else is fluff.
Wow, dude, I just love that reminder, because this whole cold plunge thing has been going on around the world. I have a friend who just bought like a $5,000 cold plunge, and I don't even know what's going on right now. Everyone is cold plunging as though they are a professional athlete in the NFL and the NBA, which is interesting to see. And yeah, like 100% agree what you say. Do what feels right to you, and sort of like, to share a little bit of context on that as well. as a Chinese, we have this thing called feng shui, right? Which is really about sort of like positioning things within your house and stuff like that. But really, the basis of feng shui is just, making sure that, when you put something somewhere, you feel that it's right. Just instinctively, you feel that it's good for you, feel positive about it. And that's about it. There's really no sort of like special place for anything and whatnot. So that kind of really just reminded me of that. Thanks for sharing that, Jesse.
Yeah.
So I want to dive a little bit more into the next topic, which is your journey as a designer, right? So we talked a lot about your content creation, but as a designer, I know that you're a self-taught designer, and I know that we haven't talked about this earlier on in the introduction as well. But you're a self-taught designer, which I believe which has been sort of like a very impressive story, because from just literally someone who isn't even in design, you became a designer, and now you're sharing your knowledge. What was that first phase like? What were you before being a self-taught designer, and what was that process like for you? Because on ADP list, we have tons of people who are listening right now, 500 over live attendees right now. They're all listening. I'm sure there is a huge handful of them who are in the career switching moments, or they are self-taught designers as well. Can you talk a little bit about your journey, into being a self-taught designer?
Yeah, so I was actually in the military, and I got out of the military and didn't have any like a set of skills I could apply anywhere. So I was playing music, which I'm still very passionate about to this day. I was playing music and I was washing dishes and waiting tables. And I just didn't love what I was doing on a day to day. I craved the time where I could be creative and express myself creativity and, whatever it is, like in the evening, but I didn't like my day to day. And somebody gave me a bootleg, I hate to say it, I feel really bad about it, but a bootleg copy of like Photoshop 7, and said, try this. Like, people do graphic design and design stuff for like a job. And I went, really? And so my first foray into all of it was using a bootleg copy of Photoshop 7 to make band flyers. And they were all grungy and they had too much drop shadow and everything was textured. And I was just learning. And that process started from me just somebody showing me everything they knew, mentorship, into me reading at the time, which was the popular thing, design blogs. Just I would scroll all the way down to the bottom. I'd see the end result. I would try to make it myself, couldn't do it, scroll back up to the top and start following the steps to actually make it and learn the techniques, learn the skill set, the craft. And I did that for a really long time. Then I had actually my step two mentor. I had a mentor who had worked for like Disney Interactive and Universal, and he actually agreed to spend an hour a week with me, just an hour a week with me, and show me a couple of tips and tricks and let me ask him questions. And I did that for maybe 6 months, and that mentorship was invaluable. It was priceless for me. And it fast forward my love of what I was doing. Then I volunteered to start doing design work at my church, did it for free. What do you want me to make? I'll just make stuff. Just let me make ugly things for you, pretty please. And they said yes. Okay. And I made a lot of ugly things for them. And I leveraged that experience and that kind of trajectory into my very first paid gig as a in-house graphic designer at a tour company. I leveraged that one to move into a marketing and design agency. I leveraged that one to move into startups, and on we go. So it's about my whole journey has been leveraging what I know, and like when I'm learning it, and asking for help. That's literally my entire career I owe to being curious, trying to leverage A into B and B into C, and asking for help along the way. And what I love about this industry is I had no professional training. I hadn't been to school. I graduated high school with a D plus average. I went back to college later on and got a 4.0 because I realized my love of learning. But I mean, you're talking to somebody who had no formal training, no art background, hates to draw, nothing like that. But I found a skill that did not require me to be an artist and didn't require me to go to college. It just required me to work hard and build my skills in my craft and be willing to be curious and let it lead me where it leads me. And that's what's so great about design is you can be a self-taught designer. And as long as you are pushing yourself and challenging yourself and asking for help, you will grow. It may not be in the time frame you wish it was. I wish I could have had some sort of successful career within 6 months or a year or 2 years. But it took me a little bit longer, but I had to learn and grow piece by piece. But I love it. It's like, it's not who you know. It's not where you went to school. We're one of the very few industries where it's about what you can produce. And what you produce is directly correlated to how often you ask for help, how willing are you to show your work, how receptive are you to feedback, what are you learning and reading, and how are you growing? That's all it is. And so anybody with the right mindset can get into this industry and grow a career, I think, pretty rapidly, especially nowadays with the amount of content that's online, educational materials. It's the reason I just dropped a new program called the 30-day UI designer program. And the whole goal is to like train people to be UI designers. It's everything I wish I had I could find when I started my career. But there's so many things like that online that people can get into. It's just so much easier now to elevate your career and learn the skills than ever before.
Well, thank you so much for that, Jesse. And 100% you're right. There are tons of contents out there, and places where we can ask for mentorship, we can ask for help online. So a lot of resources, and I'm so inspired by your journey. I didn't know that you were from you were from the military, and I couldn't find that on LinkedIn. I spent 2 years in the army as well, so I guess we have some common grounds there, which is exciting. Thanks for sharing that. And when you think about sort of this journey, and obviously it hasn't been that easy. I mean, looking back, would there be any advice that you have for people that are already on this journey? I know that you talk about being curious. It's really about the mindset. It's about doing things that feels right to you as well. Are there any sort of like concrete and advice that you would say that, hey, look, these are things where I kind of like wish that I knew, or that you would say that has really helped you a lot along the way as well? Are there any specific that you want to mention?
Yeah, I think probably one of the most powerful things is at like simultaneously one of the most difficult things. And that is sharing your work often and early, sharing your work with people and requesting feedback way before you think it's ready. That is probably, in my opinion, one of the most important things. And that's why mentorship is so powerful. That's why design critiques are so powerful, because we get it in our heads that it needs to be a little bit better, it needs to be a little bit better. Oh, I don't want to show anybody because it's not done. But what they don't realize is showing people things in the early stages will actually guide and direct you to make it better and faster and more efficient. So the earlier on that you start sharing things and saying, I'm looking for feedback. I learned very early on, and I don't know if it's just my personality or maybe the military sewed it into me, but I am masochistic to a sense, like, about feedback. I'm like, tell me what's wrong with it. Tell me what you think I can do to fix it. Tell me what you've seen other people have done it better. Show me, tell me. I'm here for it. So I don't get offended when people have feedback for me. One of my favorite things to do is read negative YouTube comments. Love it, because some of them are true. Some of them are like, man, this guy's like obnoxious or something. I'm like, am I? Okay, well, let me think about that. I'm not opposed to it. I love it, man. I think it's so good. But really, like, get over yourself and share your work early and often. You do that, and I just, man, I can't. I say this all the time. If a designer does that, it will 10x the speed of their progression. 100% true. It will 10x the speed of their progression, because they're just learning so much as they're going. Nothing's worse than going back and tinkering in the background for weeks or months, coming up and going, here it is, and people go, oh, I don't like it. It's so much better to deliver an MVP of something, a minimum viable product, my early stage of where it's at. And people go, I like it. Maybe think about these things. Whoa, those are things I wouldn't even thought about at this early stage. That changes what things are going to end up to be at the end result of whatever project I'm working on. So early, often, and be aggressive about receiving feedback. Be willing to receive it.
Well, thank you so much, Jesse. So just for everyone, reminder again, show early, show often, be aggressive about showing it. Don't just wait until you have the perfect, iteration or design. Just show very early and very often. Thank you so much for that reminder, Jesse. So while we're talking about, design and craft, I know that you're also a front-end developer. And obviously one of the most popular question around in design is, I believe it's also in a sense satire as well, which is, do designers need to learn how to code? I know that you also do front end development. How do you strike a balance between keeping your craft in doing it on Figma and front end development? How do you spend your time around two of these? And would you recommend designers to do it? Learn front end development as well, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and whatnot.
Yeah, I think so I'll be very like honest. Like I actually haven't coded anything like any front end projects in maybe 5 years. And I'm very, very happy about that because the rise of no code tools and low code tools have reduced my need to do that. It's not to say that I don't love code and love that experience. I totally do. And I still think it's very, very helpful. There's value to knowing at least the basics of how code works, whether it's front end or back end. But for me, what I've realized is one of the things I love to do is to work with developers, and to work with developers, it's very helpful for me to know how to speak their language or to understand at least what's possible. Some of the worst I've worked on both sides of the both sides of the restaurant, so to speak, right? I've worked, like doing design work, receive it, like having to hand things off to developers to code. And I've worked on the code side, having designers hand things off to me that are unrealistic. And I'm going, oh my gosh. So what I actually love and I think is so valuable is even if you just know a hint of like HTML, a little bit of CSS and JavaScript, you understand the medium, you understand what's possible, not possible, what's reasonable, not reasonable. You start to really quickly, even if you don't want to be a front end dev or back end dev, you start to really quickly become the development team's favorite designer. Why? Because you have empathy for them, right? Like they don't come bang on your computer screen while you're working in Figma and go, why can't you just do this faster? You go, hey, I'm doing stuff. Like it's not how it works, right? How unreasonable is that? So there's just something like that's very beneficial. Do I think it can do I think you need to be to know code to be a good designer? No, you do not. Absolutely not. But you will be a better designer if you at least have empathy for code, because especially as UI designer, UX designer, that's where our work is headed, right? If I want to be a successful print designer, do I have to be the actual printer and like the person who like actually prints things with ink and paper and page stock and card stock? No, I don't need to be, but it's going to make me a better print designer if I understand card stock, if I understand CMYK values and the vendor who's doing the printing and the machine they print on. It's going to make me better, right? So I think it can only help you. Now, I will say it's very, very hard to balance trying to do it all, right? I think that used to be one of my goals. One of my desires was like, I want to be a unicorn. I want to do front end dev, back end dev. I want to do design. I want to do all of it. And what I realized was, me personally, there are some people out there that can do it. And I'm just going to, from the people who can't be unicorns, we hate you unicorns. We're not fans of the unicorns, okay? Because there are select people that can do it all. But I just realized I couldn't do it all. So what I decided to do was instead narrow my stack of skills that I use on a daily basis. I don't want to do branding and then also try to do back end dev. I want to narrow that scale and that stack to be more in this realm. And I found that this stack that I'm currently working with, it works well for me. I enjoy doing those things. And they're so like the stack I'm talking about is I do UI design, product design, UX design, web design, and I use some no code tools to build sites and applications. For me, that works. And they're so closely related that they're constantly being used because those skills are rubbing up against themselves. If somebody asked me to do branding or t-shirt design right now, that's so far off in left field from what I do on a daily basis. It's going to slow me down. It's going to be way harder for me to do it. It's going to affect my success of the stack of skills. So I think it can be beneficial for people to learn, or at least just understand the smallest amounts. And if you don't want to like actually learn code, but you want to get some basic understanding of it, like maybe just jump into something like Webflow. And Webflow can like works very much like a front end dev would work. It's very different than some of the other no code tools that are drag and drop. When you work in Webflow, you got to know like the box model and margin and padding and spacing. You got to understand like block and inline block and all these different things. So you'll learn those and you go, oh, I know what that is. So it's just very helpful.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jesse. There's so much that you mentioned about this, but always have like empathy for the people that you work with, especially the developers. And if you have empathy for that, I think it would always result in great collaboration, as you mentioned. So while we're on the topic of craft, and we're talking about you as a designer, there's always been a question that I think it's quite popular with everyone as well, which is sort of the point of view of how do you determine who is a good designer versus a great designer, right? Like I know that you're so deep in your craft, that's proven through a lot of the work that you have done and you have shown on your website, through your YouTube and everything. um, it's obvious that you know visual and experience really really well. And I'm just curious, how do you look at someone and you say, hey, look, they know what they're doing, and let's say we should hire this person, right? So um how would you differentiate between an okay designer versus someone who you say, great, this is a great designer, we should hire them right away? What are some of the things that would stand out, when you look at a designer?
Yeah, ooh, that's a good question. I like this question a lot because I think there's a huge part of me that wants to talk about like the technical craft and skill of like design. But I think what actually matters more is the knowledge and understanding of what I as a designer am there for. Why do I exist? Right. Um, I think the big differentiator, there's a couple, but for me, the big differentiator between an okay designer and a great designer, the okay designer is so hyper focused on them designing the best possible thing in the world, seeing it because they're so proud and passionate about the design that they've created. But the great designer is willing to sacrifice what they love, sacrifice what they think is really great for the good of the user or the good of the product or the company. So to me, it's really a maturity level because the immature designer, the okay designer says, I want my design to be seen. I want to be right. And the great designer, the mature designer says, I want what's best. And my solution may not necessarily be what's best. I would actually hire a subpar, quote unquote, visual designer, like that is subpar maybe in their visual or like actual skill set in the craft, as long as they are um, as long as they are empathetic, as long as they understand the goals that what we're here to do, which is actually serve the client or serve the product or serve the user, that or if they're willing to collaborate or surrender their ideas or thoughts to what's actually best, if they're willing to work well as a team. I think one of the biggest things right now, you talked about something about this in the early or the beginning of the interview, which is like the tough job market. The thing that is the huge differentiator right now in this tough job market is actually soft skills. It's not hard skills, because there are a lot of talented designers that have hard skills of UI design and animation and prototyping. And if you don't have those, sure, work on those for sure, 100%. But the soft skills, like, can you collaborate? Can you work with? Do you work well as a team? Can you communicate? Are you open to feedback? Like, these soft skills, in my opinion, are the biggest differentiator right now. And so I think that that's what's really, really important is, and what makes you a great designer is being a good team player and serving the needs of others.
Wow, thank you so much for that, Jesse. I mean, like, everybody should give you a round of applause for that, because it's such a powerful advice. When you really talk about soft skills, and I think it's the things that you see just beyond the craft that actually makes that tipping point even possible, from a decent subpar designer to a great designer. Thanks for sharing that. Now, we are obviously running short of time. I think we have a lot of people with tons of questions, so we're going to dive into some of the audience question, which I think
Okay.
it's pretty interesting. Some of them have been upvoted quite a few times. So I'm just going to share a couple of questions on stage and read them out loud. So this is Brian Taylor. He's a design manager from San Diego. So Brian's question is, what are your thoughts on using generative AI tools in product design? There seem to be quite a bit of divide on this subject in the design community.
Love this question. Man, I am so for it. I'm so excited about AI. I think a lot of people are divided. Some people are fearful. They think it's going to make them, like, it's going to steal their jobs. It's going to take away from something they do. But in my opinion, and I was just having a conversation with a friend of mine named Dan Mall, and he agreed with me. All it's going to do is release us from some of the mundane things, some of the things we don't want to do. Like, listen, if you want to spend your career changing the pixel size of that input box or that search field, then more power to you. But I think what AI is going to do is it's going to release us from the need to do that. and it's going to make us use our words and actually problem solve. So I want to be able to say to AI, I want a login screen with this many fields and looks like this and does this. And when it doesn't come out right, I can correct it with my words. I want everybody to be elevated away from pushing pixels to become art directors and creative directors. Like, and those are the skills of problem solving. So I'm excited about that because I think so many people have amazing ideas and they are able to problem solve. But this me using this mouse and moving things around the screen is very clunky, I think. And I think AI is going to get us away from some of that clunkiness and make that process of problem solving smoother. That's my opinion.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Jesse. Let's move on to the next question by Helen Choi, product designer. What are the most essential skills and qualities for junior designers to develop based on your expertise and experience in the field?
Yeah. I'm going to say three things and they all kind of boil down to one thing really, but I'm going to say communication, presentation, and sales. And all of those things really are, and none of those things actually are any sort of hard skill that has to do with product design. But that's another one of those differentiators between a junior designer and a senior designer. A senior designer is somebody that knows how to present well, who knows how to get buy-in from stakeholders, who knows how to show work and actually sell value. A junior designer is somebody that says, look how pretty this thing is that I've made. And a senior designer, a really valuable designer, is somebody who says, I don't care how pretty it is. Look at how much we've increased sales and revenue and leads and traffic. Those are the things that actually start to differentiate. And I think a lot of those things have to do with communication, right? Being succinct. Are your emails short to the point? Do they get across what they need to? A lot of times we read job descriptions and they say self-starter, good communicator. We go, yeah, I got that in the bag. I'm those things. But are you really? Do you know how to communicate? Do you know how to not talk through your case study, just, sharing the things that you love about it and how pretty it is? Do you know how to pinpoint and point out where things make huge impact, how you bring value to a company or to a user? If you know how to do those things through communication, it's going to be like game changing.
Wow, that is like 100% something that I would say as well. I have been telling people as well that look, you can have some great design, but if you don't know how to communicate it or storytell it, man, like it is just not going to be. Even if it's a 10 out of 10, it could just end up be a 3 out of 10 just because you don't know how to tell a good story around it.
And that's
So
yeah, that's such a great point. Like
yeah.
designers who have the visual skills to design 10 out of 10 beautiful interfaces and projects, but don't know how to sell it, it diminishes the value and the quality of that work. Somebody who makes ugly work, 3 out of 10, like D minus level, like visual design work, but knows how to sell it and point out value and problem solve for value and communicate that, all of a sudden it elevates them. So man, like if you can do both of those things, you are like high level of expertise.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Jesse. Great reminder for that. All right. So we have a next question, also very popular. It's by Bryant as well. So Bryant asks another question, which is popularly voted here. I am curious to know what you both think has been fueling the mass layoff in the tech sector over the past few years, and when you believe the tides might start to turn. Seem to be the toughest season to find a job in the tech industry.
Yeah, it is a tough season right now. It's tough because competition is high, supply of talented creatives is high, and economy is tough. So that means that therefore the demand is low. It's a simple supply and demand issue that's happening right now, but that doesn't mean that people need to freak out. I do think that it will probably turn the tide, but right now, I mean, we're seeing lots of mass layoffs, but at the same time, we're still seeing hiring. We're still seeing companies who are forming new startups, new projects that need creatives, that need designers. I think one of the things you could probably help yourself in this season is to diversify, and I mean that in two ways, and I'm interested to hear what you think, Felix. But number one would be to diversify your skill set. Maybe you went really hard into one vertical of design. Maybe you're just like, all I want to do is web design. All I want to do is web design. Well, I think we're seeing a lot of large companies right now having more of a small startup mentality. They want people to wear multiple hats and do multiple things. So learning how to diversify your skill set might be helpful. Maybe learn some 3D, learn some animation, learn something that is tangentially connected to your core skill. It becomes very, very attractive if you are a web designer that can also do a little bit of no code, like web building. They're like, hey, that could be very helpful to us. And oh, also, I know a little bit about social media marketing and content marketing. Wow, we could really use this person. So your value goes up through the roof, right? But the other, I think, diversification that needs to happen is the diversification of your income streams. I think that what we've learned more than ever right now is that it's not safe to work for somebody else in a full-time capacity and have that be your only income stream. So now is the time to start leveraging what you do know, whether that is, working freelance, moonlighting on the side, writing ebooks, like sharing information, like building courses, like whatever it is. Like maybe you're a person who just loves to like scan textures. You should be selling those textures. There's a million ways to make money on the side, but now is a great time to diversify where your income happens, right? Because those two things together, I think, will give you a trajectory, like a more confident trajectory and a less fearful one, because you're taking hold of your future.
Wow, man, I really love that, which is really diversifying your skills and diversifying your income, which both I 100% agree with. I'll give a different like perspective here while building on top of yours. I think what you mentioned from a designer perspective and from a business perspective, really, spot on. I will share a little bit about why this is happening as well. Obviously, like the interest rate has been increased like crazy over the past couple of years, probably within the past 2 years, and so it's extremely tough for a lot of startups and companies to fundraise right now, and therefore you do see the layoffs, but also you do see companies realizing that, hey, look, we actually don't need that much employees, and so they kind of take this opportunity to obviously let go of tons of people. So that's really exactly what's happening right now. And if you kind of look at these companies, that's kind of really the internal situation. So I have tons of friends who are also founders in big tech, small tech as well. And I think the trend of smaller teams and lean teams, that's not going to change. I think it's going to stay there. Obviously, when the economy gets well, I think things are going to pick up, and that there'll be more jobs available. The way I think about it is, to be obviously, as what Jesse has mentioned, which is really to stay patient, but really, start building up your skill sets, right? Because not safe anymore, right? Because the world is changing. Obviously, things are going to be different as well moving forward. So you want to make sure that you're in a safe position, diversifying your skill sets. More importantly, diversifying your income streams as well, right? It could be just being an advisor to a company, or being an advisor to just a startup as well, even, and just receiving a small stipend every Friday, or something like that. And so I think those things goes a long way. It helps a lot as well to kind of like take control of your future, as what Jesse has mentioned. Yeah, so hopefully those things helps. And Jesse, thanks for such an amazing insight on this.
Yeah.
Cool. So we'll take the last question before we wrap up for the rest of this morning, for some of us, and evening for some as well. So let's. Okay, this is going to be interesting. Actually, we have one question that is not economy related, not design related. So this is by Jasmine Walker. How do you manage burnout, prioritize balance despite your ambition and impactful mission?
That's yeah. So I mean, I kind of touched on it a little bit earlier, but I spoke about in the context of I've hit burnout, I've hit block. What do we do then? But what do I do on the daily to kind of manage it or even prevent it? This is just such not the popular answer, but you just have to go slower. I think people want big things, and I think that's great. Um, but I'm not the type of person that wants to build a massive empire and not have my children see their father and not spend time with my wife and not have a life outside of work. I don't want to live to work. I want to work to live. Right. And my whole goal is to build a lifestyle business and a lifestyle for myself where I can actually enjoy it. So part of that for me is a level of self-control that says go a little slower, and that's hard because I can see a lot of people going faster than me. and I can get shiny object syndrome and go, oh, look what they're doing. Oh, look what I should be doing that too. Oh man, I want to do that. I could do that. But I have to sometimes slow myself down and say, maybe I can do that. Let's address it. Maybe it's one of those or situations and I have to drop something else to do it. Maybe I could take this on. Maybe I could delegate it. Maybe I could outsource it. But I only have so much candle to burn, and I'm not about to burn it at both ends. So that means if I need to go a little bit slower so that I can go over the long, like for the long haul, that's what I'm going to do. I saw somebody on Twitter the other day mention me, and they're like, like Jesse Showalter is one of my favorite OG, like old school YouTubers. I was like, I've only been doing it for 6 years, you guys. That's not old. Like that's not old school. But actually, in the world of content creation, people usually burn out. It's like most people starting small businesses or freelancing. Like 60% of people that will start freelancing will burn out and leave the whole freelancing pursuit within the first year. Why? Because they went too fast. They didn't set it up. They didn't know how to do it. They don't know how to delegate. They don't know how to slow down and hyper focus. They don't realize that sometimes less is more and that the slow and steady wins the race. And so I realized, oh, that's right. Whoops. Like I am coming on my 7th year of creating content on YouTube, and most people have kicked the bucket. Most people have not, that's a dreadful term. That means death, but most people have left the content creation pursuit, I should have said, but not me, because I'm willing to go slower and I'm willing to not get caught up in the hype. And so I think that as as discouraging as it seems, I'm almost 40. I can't keep up with a 20-year-old content creator. I just can't. I have kids, I have a wife, I have a life, and I guess what? I'm not about to try. So I'm going to do me. I'm going to do my thing at my speed that seems right for me. I guess it kind of goes back to that thing of do what's right for you, but we're all different, right? Some people are meant to have 10 million YouTube subscribers, making a piece of like 5 pieces of content every day, and a podcast and a this and a that. And guess what? That's just not me. So knowing what works for you and slowing down has helped me to manage burnout and prevent it as much as possible.
Well, I just really, really love that. And I think, what you mentioned about just slowing down and, keeping up with the momentum, I think that is amazing. I recently, while we were talking, and I recently remember this quote that I came across over the weekend was that a lot of people, especially right now in our time, they are trying to talk about this subject, and I'm sure you have probably heard of it over the internet as well, Jesse, which is like longevity, right? But health and kind of extending your lifespan. And then I came across this quote, I believe probably on Twitter as well, which really talks about, hey, instead of just trying to add years to your life, you should be adding life to your years.
Yeah.
And I thought that was meaningful because, what you mentioned about spending time with your wife and your kids, I think that's extremely powerful. A lot of us, including myself, tend to really just forget about that. Life just goes too fast. And thanks for this, great reminder about slowing things down and just keeping us at that pace. Now, before we wrap up, Jesse, I wanted to ask you one last question, which is, really sort of like takeaway and advice, that you have for the world and especially people looking at this. I know you have, young kids. And by the way, you don't look close to 40. You do look kind of like in your 20s. I feel like I'm closer to 40 than you are, by the way. So I'm curious, like, a lot of folks here will probably be, I guess, kind of seniors in a way to your kids. When your kids grow up, they might, meet each other in the workforce. So the advice that you give today will also translate back to the next generation, to your kids' generation. Now, knowing this, what advice would you give everyone in this room today to take forward, to take into their lives or to take into their for the rest of their career?
Yeah. This is something I tell my kids and something I remind myself about daily, which is the real battle is not a battle for money, right? Like you'll always be able to make more money. And time is probably one of the most valuable resources. You can make more money, but you can't make more time. But it's really even more, like even further than that. The constant battle I have, and I think most people have, is one of contentment. And what I would say is, if you're not content with who you are and where you're at now, more money, more accolades, more awards, like better position in the org chart at work, it's not going to make you content. And so if you can't figure out how to have contentment with what you've been given now, be a good steward of it, figure out how to live balanced with it, to a certain extent, I mean, I think that there's times where like you probably need to push through, and there is a time and a place for growth, but I think that there's always going to be a time and a place for contentment. And I will never, I would assume, talk to anybody on their deathbed and they'll say, I wish I would have gotten another promotion. I think that they're probably, most people on their deathbed are going to say, I wish I would have figured out how to use my time well and be content with what God has given me. So for me, I'm like, I'm the constant battle is one of contentment. Like, am I realizing how fortunate I am, how blessed I am, how fantastic like what's been given to me is, and to be a good steward of it. I think those are the bigger things. I think if we all lived with a mindset of seeking contentment, I hate, it's going to sound cheesy, I think the world would be a better place. I think people would be better off, and I think that we would be constantly pouring in something of value to the next generation.
Wow, thank you so much. That so powerful, so zen. I really love that. Now, before we wrap up, I would love to kind of end it with something fun.
Yeah.
And we always have this surprise lightning round of questions. So just five
Okay.
questions. Usually ask the same questions to everyone as well. So are you ready, Jesse?
Yeah, I'm ready. Let's go.
Awesome. So first question: what is your favorite day of the week?
Oh, favorite day of the week. I really love, actually, this is going to be weird. I love Wednesday. I know it's kind of like hump day, middle of the week, but I feel like I've pushed past all the kind of start of the week where I'm slow going. Wednesday, I'm like hitting my stride. I feel the best I can feel on Wednesdays.
Awesome. Favorite city in the US besides the one that you are living in?
Oh, ooh, yeah. That's a good one. Oh man, that's a tough one. Boy, oh boy, oh boy. Okay, I live in Austin, Texas. I do love Austin, Texas a whole lot. There's a little town in Northern California, like right outside of Napa Valley. And man, I can't remember the name, but it is just so quiet and sleepy and peaceful. I'll try. I wish I could remember the name, but somewhere around the Napa Valley in California.
Awesome. What is the best age so far that you have lived through? What is the best age?
So I'm sorry, say that again. The best what?
The best age. Age.
Oh,
Aging.
age, the best age.
Yeah.
I know people were like, "Man, I wish I was back in my 20s." Like, I really am enjoying my late 30s. So I'm like, I hate to say it, but I'm 39 right now. I like 39. It's a good time.
Awesome. Would you want to live forever if you have a choice?
Heck no. No, I don't want any of that immortality business. No, thank you.
Okay, and last question. What's for dinner tonight?
Tonight I'm cooking for my children because my wife's out of town, and I'm making falafel with savory couscous.
Oh, awesome. Awesome. I don't know what is that. I probably have to Google that. But Jesse, thank you so much for joining us this morning, this afternoon, this evening. And thank you all so much as well for joining this session with Jesse. I would love for everyone to share your learnings on social media with all of us. Tag us as well, AD, please, and Jesse. Tell us what you have learned. We'd love to hear it from you. But Jesse, last but not least, thank you so much for joining us. We had so much fun coordinating with your team just to have you here. Such an honor as well to have you. So thank you.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.